Hello, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Fabian Pavon. I am a board member with the Latina and Latino Roundtable, and I'm part of the Pomona Education Coalition, along with other organizations. And to kickstart the reclaiming of our narratives, we brought a very special guest. We to show off our community talent. So today we have none other than the poet laureate Judah One. But to understand who Judah One is, you've got to know the work, and it'll all fall into alignment. David Judah Oliver is an accomplished poet and author of 2 published books of original poetry. He is the co-host and founder of Lion-like Mind State Poetry and art series at the Pomona Fairplex. He has been a member of the Los Angeles Slam team 2005 and 2006. Coach and slam master of the Empire Mind State Poetry slam team of Pomona 2009 and 2010. He led his team of poets to second in the nation. As an entrepreneur, he owned and operated the now legendary Machine Pomona Art Gallery in the Pomona Arts Colony from 2011 to 2014. For this work, he was awarded a full scholarship to further his education at Pitzer College of the Claremont Colleges. He is an art consultant for the Ontario Montclair School District and from 2012 to the present. So David Judah One has taught poetry at every level of education, spanning from kindergarten to college and university workshops, even beyond bars and barriers as an art instructor for the prison education program, teaching poetry to inmates at Chino Men's and Women's Prison, Norco Rehabilitation Center for Men, including Camp Glen Rocky Detention Camp for Boys in San Dimas. He is also a licensed minister and has officiated 13 weddings. David Marcus Oliver Judah One was recently unanimously voted to serve on the Pomona Arts and Culture Commission as a Citizen Advisory Committee member. He is the inaugural Poet Laureate of Pomona. Everybody, please show him some love on the chat and in the reactions.
Word up, Poet Laureate Pomona in the building. Hey, yo, peace. We got to add one more because I am now the inaugural artist activist in residence at Pitzer College at the Claremont Colleges. Oh, it's going down. It's historic all year. We're not stopping. Hey, yo, let me see how we do this. His parents are Black African, not Black African American. Mom is from Kenya. Pops from Zimbabwe. Somehow he lacks pigment, no melanin and figment. White skin, blonde hair, blue eyes. His flesh is the evidence. The difference between black and white is as simple as turning your hand over. His DNA is the evidence that oftentimes life is more complex on the bus they stare. He feeds not into their fascination. This is not imagination. White kids call him nigger. Black kids call him white boy, so he nicknamed himself Soy. Feels he is an imitation but doesn't feel the flattery. And his mom is from Ireland. Pop straight from Germany. He's raised in Inglewood, so he's in rap ciphers with the best of them. White kids call him nigger. Black kids call him white boy. His friends say that's my nigga. He's the only Caucasian they know that they allowed to return that. And when they shake hands, it sounds like a soul clap. His mom says it at home, though. She slams on the coffee table and tells him to pick his pants up and walk like a good white boy. She says you act like a monkey, nigger. So he goes to his room, smokes a bowl, just a silencer, listens to Public Enemy, reads Malcolm X, looks in the mirror, feels quite vexed. And his mom has her master's. Pops works construction, though. They're the only Black family in this part of the suburbs, and he's damn good on that board. Sponsored by the local skate shop, he has a 4.2 and contemplating Boston College. White kids call him nigger. Black kids call him white boy. He's dark like the shade and smiles like the sun, but every day he has to run. Some white boys, when I heard them, they say that skateboard is not a basketball, Jerome. We're going to break your legs and then take our sport back. Fatigue from running cyclical. A skate ramp won't help him escape that. Black kids don't accept him. They say you talk like a white boy, but he's a good sport though, because he doesn't lash out, right? He just cuts his arms a little and wears long sleeves. Once we're led by Moses, now we're just children of the wilderness, wandering the desert with old stories and no remembrance. It's easy to define race. Culture is where it gets complex. This is the story of America and why our sons have a complex. Equal because the law says, although lawmen treat us different. Equal because the blood says, although skin shows us different. Education, a great equalizer. The workforce proves that different. You can have a great melting pot and still have fires burning at the bottom of it. Popes, politicians, and principals preach the nature of land and law, but it doesn't equate to too much when we nurture our prejudices. Can you guys hear me all right? I should have asked about that first. All right, cool. I'm gonna read some poems. Some of them be new, some gonna be old. I wrote this poem about my boys at Camp Glen Rocky Detention Camp right here in San Dimas. I am in the city I love, Pomona, right now. That was in 2012. They said, yo, Judah, you've been with us all summer. Can you write some for us? I said, yo, if I write some for y'all, y'all gonna cry. They said, man, we're not gonna cry. We are in jail. They was in jail crying. You hear me? So was I. All right, so here we go. They boys. They play fight and slot box, use foul language, tell mama jokes, get defensive when they go too far. Them boys, they often go too far, trying to prove themselves as men that they aren't yet. Sex self-educated, single parent raised, they boys, often on the same wrong road as their brothers. Mothers cry for them, so they are here, far from home and freedom. Freedom got them detained. No one restrained them boys, so they are here. Teaching me about the hood we escaped from. I gave my mother something extra on Mother's Day in memory of these boys I teach, trying to reach and extract them. Their mentality reaches my tear ducts. Faces feature in my prayers. They just boys like I was once. I hope they become better men than I am now. Teaching poetry is often halted when I question, why are you here? How long? How does this feel? Bars can't hold their dreams. I give them paper, teach them to write. Others how to spell simple words. No, girl is spelled with an I, not a U. Some too gangster to ask or write emotion, so they draw. I wonder if they draw if they hear. If that is the case, I hope they are listening. I got a story to tell, not just a lesson to teach. Not a preacher, but this is spiritual. Parables, divinity and hood abstracts. Them boys asked me to write about them. I didn't know where to start. Now I don't know where to end. See, I teach poetry at a detention camp for boys. Twice a week I see them, happy to see them smiling, at least when I come, saddened to see them smiling, hear them joking about doing the same thing that got them boys here when they get out. Really, I'm just saddened I see them at all. Bars are not the place for boys and animals. One of the boys said they are animals. I refuted him, saddened that I even had to. I leave them tired because I care more. I wish we had more time. I wish they had no time. They boys. You're probably gonna hear the train behind me. It's training day. It's training day in Pomona, you hear me? All right, I'm gonna spit another poem. Is the train too loud? I'm gonna have to hop in the whip because I was outside running around when the time came upon me. I'm gonna get in the whip. All right, it's a little better, perhaps. All right, here we go. I wrote this last year in the spirit of Sankofa. It's actually called Sankofa Futura because we're still making history. We're looking back and we got to remember where we came from, but we can't just keep looking back. We got to keep moving forward. So here we go. We still Black and achieving. We still Black and moving. We still Black and empowered from within. We still Black and believing. We still Black and knowing that history is to be studied. It's not over. That Black history is still in the making, that there have been many remakings and remarkings and remarks and red marks on maps that keep us out of homes, positions and positioning. We still Black in positioning. We still Black in remembering, Sankofa and forward thinking. We still Black history in the making of and in ourselves, many firsts again. Innovations and inaugurations spawned from self and creations and imaginations made manifest. We still Black in evidence of magic or a solar power and magic is movement. We still Black in moving through. We still Black in waiting through these waters, through these times of trouble. Still we find peace somehow through these struggles or seek the understanding of constantly coming back to the truth that our story is not over, that Black history is still in our making. Our history is making ourselves into who we want to be or need to be out of necessity, our faith, often both. Some parents call it hope for the children who are still our future. now, and Black like we still and forever will be, one with darkness, deep space, and thick waters, black holes, dark stars, and the origin of every light and spectrum of hue. Some black like purple, some black like blue, or some black is blue, some dark and red, some tan and sand. It's time and again for the wise woman and strong man to plan and come together and multiply and not again be divided by internal fears or external struggles. Once we climb by step, now we climb by tears. Historically, ours is the technology of ancient engineers, an alchemy without a peer, chemically complex DNA providing antidote to antivenom and antivirus or the serum. With minds on mathematics, we calculate the ETA on GPS and hang these truths on the internet. We had a World Wide Web once, and Akasha Records connected us to each other, to the air, to each other, to and ancestors, by the air, by the water, and all frequencies that move. We still black and catch of these currents. We still black and setting trends in this current. We move through this world as waves, becoming particles of light. When not observed, we black again. Thank you guys for having me out. I am the poet laureate, Pomona, California. You can find me on IG, Judah1, Judah. Also look me up at theartofdavidjudah.com. Peace.
Thank you so much. Please show some love through your reactions or through the chat to Pomona's inaugural poet laureate, everybody. Thank you all so much. Thank you so much, Judah1. Appreciate you. Thank you for holding it down all day, every day. All right, y'all. So we're gonna go ahead and keep it moving, keep it grooving. Thank you all so much for coming today. My name is Fabian Pavon. We are the Pomona Education Coalition. We're a group of youth, students, community members, and educators advocating to bring change to schools in Pomona. We are composed of different organizations at Pomona, such as Gente Organizada, Padres Unidos de Pomona, Pomona Students Union, Indigenoughledge, Toibigna, Latina Roundtable of San Gabriel and Pomona Valley, the NAACP Pomona chapter, MECHA, Black Student Union, and the Ethnic and Women's Studies Department at Cal Poly Pomona. We are currently working on 2 issues which are broken up into committees within the coalition. One issue is to bring the ethnic studies graduation requirement to Pomona Unified. The second issue is, and that we will be returning to soon, is to push for youth and non-citizens to be able to vote within school board elections at PUSD. And so as a result of our organizing efforts, on Wednesday, August 18, 2021, Pomona Unified School District passed a resolution that will require students to complete a year-long ethnic studies course in order to graduate. We are now focusing our efforts on working with PUSD in order to implement an authentic and effective ethnic studies curriculum. This event is organized by the Pomona Education Coalition's Ethnic Studies Committee in collaboration with the Liberated Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum Coalition. The purpose of this event is to educate ourselves and our community on Chapter 2 of the Liberated Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum, which focuses on Black studies. So to introduce our folks for today, our presenters for today, we have Teresa Montaño. So if you would like to unmute yourself and speak to our community, I'd really appreciate that.
Thank you. We, like you, are a broad-based coalition of over 70 ethnic studies educators and activists from all walks of life, from all parts of California, who have come together to put together the Liberated Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum. And it's with great pleasure and extreme pride that I introduce the leaders of our Black Studies chapter, those who are constructing the chapter in Black Studies for K-12 students. Our first presenter, Dr. Taunya Jaco, has been a long-time activist for educational justice. She's a 6th grade ELA social studies teacher. She serves on the board of directors for the California Teachers Association, is the secretary for the National Education Association's Black Caucus, and is formerly the chair of the Civil Rights and Education Committee for CTA State Council. While using critical race theory as her foundational theoretical framework in her dissertation, she completed a documentary that we often use in our work, Fidelity at the Forefront, the Fight for Ethnic Studies, which documented the fight for ethnic studies in California and the fight we continue to engage in as practitioners and scholars. She has a master's in journalism from the Regent University and a bachelor's of arts in political science from San Diego State. Join me in welcoming Dr. Taunya Jaco. Our next presenter is Ndindi Kitonga, a Kenyan American educator, lifelong community organizer, and homeless rights activist. She is a member of the Association of Rasa Educator. She actually co-leads our Praxis, which is our workshop productions. Ndindi is the founder of the Angelus Workshop School, which is a radical secondary school in LA, which focuses on democratic learning and class consciousness. In addition to her work in K-12, Ndindi is a faculty member at Longley School of Music of Bard College, where she teaches courses in critical curriculum inquiry and teaching methods. She's also a published scholar in the areas of revolutionary critical pedagogy and democratic education. And during the COVID pandemic, Ndindi organized a mutual aid network in 2020 that worked to deal with the issues of homelessness for the disabled and the undocumented in the community where her school is situated. These are the types of folks that compose and comprise the Liberated Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum Coalition. And now I turn it over to my colegas.
So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Eder Blanco. I would just like to speak, just to take this moment to acknowledge that we are on Tongva land and recognize them as the traditional caretakers of Tovangar, which includes the Los Angeles Basin and the Southern Channel Islands, what we now call home. We would also like to pay our respects to the Hanuk Vektam, our ancestors, Hahi Hirom, our elders, and Iyuhinkem, our relatives, past, present, and emerging. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. We are so glad to be here with you. Thank you so much for our land acknowledgement. I want to invite you all to just take a moment and type in the chat the land in which you are situated on. I know some folks are nearby, but some folks might be in different areas. So if you wouldn't mind just taking a moment to type in the chat to acknowledge and to recognize the land in which you reside on. And as you do that, I also want to start with an ancestor acknowledgement. Some of you may or may not know this phenomenal woman, and I'm going to try not to get choked up because she passed away recently. She's my sorority sister for Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. But she is was an educator, a leader in our community, and an incredible organizer, activist, mentor, sister, and friend with over 40 years of experience in education nearby in Oakland, California. I know her for leading in many ways in different caucuses, serving at all levels of our union, of our teachers union. She was involved in, even right now, and continue to up until her recent passing, one of the core leaders on the Reparations for Black Students campaign in Oakland. She was an active member of the NAACP. And one of the highlights, the mayor of Berkeley proclaimed July 19th, 2019, Rosinda Thomas Day for her tremendous public service. Our community definitely is at a loss with her absence, but we honor her and we continue her legacy with our work that we're going to do today. So, excuse me, this is very recent. So we want to just acknowledge her and lift her up and love on her. With that, I want to invite you all, right? We recognize that we do not do this work on our own, that we did not arrive in this place by ourselves, that somebody has gone before us to pave the way. So I want you to give you a moment as well to just think about what ancestor you would like to acknowledge, and to type that in the chat, right? We want to lift them up. We want to recognize their incredible contributions and our gratitude for them paving the way. So I want to give a moment. Can you type an ancestor in the chat, please? And that can be anyone who's near and dear to you, someone that you know personally, or someone that maybe you just read about. Beautiful, beautiful. Some folks in here I know knew Rosenda personally, and we love her. All right, as you continue to type that out, we're going to jump right in. And if I want to invite you to, if you can, if you're able to turn your cameras on, this is meant to be interactive, not for you to just watch. And if it's okay with you, I want to teach you a vocabulary word. The word is salbona. Can you repeat it? You can go ahead and unmute yourself, or, say it out loud in your space if you're able to. But the word is salbona. So you can say salbona. Repeat after me, salbona.
Salbona.
Beautiful. So we're gonna, I'm gonna say salbona, and you're gonna say yebo salbona. Let's try that, okay? You ready? I'm gonna say salbona, and you're gonna say yebo salbona. Ready? Salbona.
Yebo salbona.
Oh, so beautiful, even with the delay. Okay, now what does this mean? Salbona is actually from the ancient Zulu language, and it means I see you, right? And when you say yebo salbona, you're saying, yes, I see you too, right? But it's not just I see you, right? Like, hey, how you doing? I see your glasses. I see your head wrap, right? It is much deeper than that, right? It connects us in our humanity, right? That when you see me, you don't just see me, but you meet my ancestors, right? I don't just see you, but I see your lineage, right? I recognize your strength and your struggle, and I have a responsibility to respond to you as a human being, right? That we are connected in this moment and in this time, and that we are in community together. All right, so right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a chance. We're going to do a little movement. Okay, I'm going to play some music, and then when it stops, I'm going to say salbona, and you're going to say yebo salbona. You ready? All right, hopefully you can hear. All right, now if you don't, this Thursday, it's been a long week. If you don't know what to do, you can just kind of, rock your shoulders a little bit, maybe move your head back and forth, right? And if you're really into it, you can start to move your hips a little bit, right? Go right side. There you go. I see you. There you go. Left side. All right. Now, if we were in a classroom, we'd have students get up and walk around and move around and dance to the beat, feel the drums. There you go. There you go. Move a little bit. And salbona. So beautiful, right? We want students to look at each other. It's a little hard in the Zoom space, but we try, right? But we want us as a community to see one another, right? To recognize our humanity, and we want to be connected. All right, now we are also going to jump right in. I need your help with something. I need you to participate. We're getting ready to, I'm going to move us into some breakout rooms just for a few minutes, just to have a little conversation. But right now, if you wouldn't mind just opening up another tab on your computer, if you're able, or on whatever device you have, and do a Google image search for beautiful woman. So if I do that, if I just open up another tab and I'm going to type in beautiful woman, And then I see some images, but if I click right here at the top where it has all images, video, I'm going to click on images. And this, we're going to stay right here, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up the breakout rooms, and I would like for you to have a discussion. I'm going to put the questions in the chat. We'll take 5 minutes, and I just want you to discuss, how would you describe the top 5 images? What are their similarities, their differences? Do you look like, or do the women in your life look like those women? And how might that impact how you see yourself and the women in your life, right? So again, the questions are in the chat. You're going to do a quick Google search. We're going to do a breakout. Now we do have, for those who are Spanish speakers, okay, little extra, one more step. If you're going to have the option to go into a breakout room, we're going to use the main session for our Spanish speakers. So if you are a Spanish speaker, please stay in the main session. Please do not go into a breakout. If you end up in a breakout, you should be able to leave and come back to the main room. All right. Let me stop sharing my screen really quickly. Are we ready to go? Thumbs up. Say yes. We ready? Okay, awesome. On your mark, get set, go. Don't be shy.
They were all
I'm a real teacher. I'm a real teacher. I will call on non-volunteers.
They were white or all white passing.
Yeah, all white or white passing. What else?
No, they all look like movie stars, not working class. Like I remember my mother and all the women that I grew up with, and none of them looked like them.
They didn't look like the women in your family. I'm looking at some faces here. Did they look like you? Could you relate to them?
Also, what I realized, all these women look like the same. It's like they just changed their hair and they are just using the same makeup. They have the same nose. They have the same eyes. Like, it's not diversity. It's not like it's not diversity.
So how does that make you? I mean, I could tell, if I just use myself, right? They don't look anything like me. I don't have straight hair. I'm not thin, right? I'm light skinned, but very apparent that I am not white, right? So for those, and especially those who said that they don't look like the women in my family or they don't look like you, what is that? How does that make you feel about this idea of what a beautiful woman looks like?
Well, when mine came up, I have Beyonce, I have Selena Gomez, I have some people of color on my list.
Now, did you have to scroll down, or were they in your top 5?
They were in my top 5.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I must have this is on Google too. I put in 10 most beautiful women, and then it boiled it down to 4.
Oh, so no, so you just want to type in beautiful woman. Don't put like top 10 or anything like that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. And the reason why is because some folks recently, right, might have been identified by different magazines, right?
Right.
But if you just type in beautiful woman and see what pops up, right?
All right.
We all know Beyonce is gorgeous. We love her. All right, so just a little experience, right? Okay, I see one hand that's raised. Is it Temis?
Yes,
okay.
I lost my train of thought. So I will come back.
Okay, we were talking about how does that make you feel about yourself or the women in your family, right? That don't look like these top 5 women, right? This whole idea of beauty. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. We're gonna go into that. we're going to continue to be interactive. So I want to hear from you. Again, you can type in the chat. And I'm going to ask if Ndindi, if you see anybody, if you can just let me know if I missed it. Okay. So in this lesson, right, that we're going to kind of move quickly, right? If we were in the classroom, we kind of slow down and take our time with some things, but identifying the American standards of beauty, right? We kind of touched on some of them, right? Some things were already pointed out, but we're going to explain how Black women decolonize these beauty standards through our hairstyles. And we want to identify and affirm our own features as an act of self-love. Right. So regardless, even if you're not a Black woman, you can still affirm yourself. OK, just want to give that disclaimer up front. All right. So I'm going to show this image and I just want you to just unmute or type in the chat. What do you see here? What's going on? This is a recent ad. What's going on in this picture? What do you notice?
I notice, I'm Tony, by the way.
Hi, Tony.
Hi. On this ad, it's first a Black woman, looks like she's about to take off her shirt. And then when the shirt is off, she transforms it or changes into a white Caucasian lady.
Oh my God.
Or
Interesting. What else?
also advertising the beauty bar Dove soap.
Oh. Does that have any implications?
The beauty bar is the same color as the white woman.
Yeah. This is an ad that Dove soap ran just a few years ago, right? And the implication is that you almost can wash the black off, right? And that you can become lighter and more clean, right? There's the implication that if you're using the soap that you are becoming more clean. Regardless of how you may interpret this, this was highly offensive for our Black community, right? And I'm going to show you why, because this is actually not new, right? This kind of advertising is not new. And I'm going to show you in just a minute, right? But they got so much backlash and we called for a boycott for the product that...
I'm sorry.
And Dove had to remove its ad from the airwaves, okay? Yeah, and it perpetuates this narrative that, you know, skin color is dirty. All right, let's take a look at another one. This is from the 1920 for Pears soap. What do you see here? What's going on in this image?
Actually looks like Black babies are dirty. And if they wash, once they wash, they become white.
Again, perpetuating this narrative that Black skin is dirty, that there's something wrong. And I'm not sure if you can read it on your screen, but across the top here, it says, I have found Pears soap matchless for the hands and complexion, right? Giving the implication that you somehow need to become lighter, that's better. And this is from the 1920s, right? So we just saw an ad that was recent. Let's take a look at another one. What do you see here? What do you notice?
There's a lot of problems with this one. I mean, the Black child it's again dirty, like the clothes. Look at the clothes of the white child. The Black child is barefooted. I mean, it's like a soap is gonna really be magic and make you become white. So you don't want to be like that.
Yeah.
And also, I noticed that the child, like the Black child, doesn't have a voice. The only one that has a voice is a white one. And then it's not a dialogue, it's just like a monologue. And I think that that is important. Like is not an answer, it's not a replica. So it's just a one-sided vision.
Yeah, and I see in the chat, the Black child has more tattered clothing, right? She's kind of, her shoulders are rolled over. She doesn't even have any shoes on, let alone any socks. And the tagline is what stood out to me the most. Why doesn't your mama wash you with fairy soap? As to imply that this child's mother doesn't care about them. Right? There's a lot of things that we can unpack here, but what we notice, right, is how this idea of what is better, right, what is the standard or what the goal should be is really has been around since the beginning of the US and even beyond that, but if we're just going to stay here, right? And we have to recognize that these are things, this is an ad. Right? This is just an ad. We're not even getting into what's being taught and what's in policies or anything like that. We're just talking about what we see in passing, right? And we're talking about basic things like hygiene, which apply to everyone, right? So in this case, we start to identify that what's being told to us is that white women are the most beautiful women. That the closer that you get to the features of Europeans, right, your skin color, your nose, your hair, and your eyes, someone mentioned in the Google search that the women all pretty much look the same, right? They all kind of have thin nose, thin lips, like the same cheekbones, right? Like that the closer you get to the European standards of beauty, that the more beautiful you are. And that there's actually value, right? Someone mentioned earlier too, like in the one ad, the white child had the voice. Right? And you're in the ad and you're promoted, right? And it's this idea that the value is being physically beautiful by these colonial standards. And those who do not meet those standards are somehow less valuable. Right? Now, in this case, we're saying that colonization is the act of subjugating people or territory to a ruling power. Right? And this colonization of the beauty myth is actually the act of enslaving people's thoughts, right? To get you to believe and to think that this is what is desirable, right? And in this case, we see that the colonizers, the people in power want you to believe what they want you to believe about this idea of beauty. And why do you think, can you just type in the chat, why do you think controlling what people think is so important? Why might that be important, controlling people's thoughts?
When you control the narrative, then you have other people that will oppress other people without you enforcing any kind of like a coercion. It will be just implied, and everybody will if you think differently, then you will be segregated and you will be the crazy one, without telling you that you are wrong.
Yeah, and I see in the chat, right? Power. You want to be able to control people. You want to be able to control the narrative. You want power. I'm going to show us a quick video. This is just a couple minutes on the history of Black women's hair, which actually begins on the continent of Africa. This is much longer, but as you watch, I just want you to think about, as you watch, what role does hair play in the identity and culture of Black women? Okay.
The history of Black hair, our history. The history behind all elaborate designs and hairstyles originated in different ethnic groups in Africa. The first known example of dreadlocks dates back to ancient Egypt, where dreadlocks appear on many artifacts. Ancient Egyptians with dreadlocks have also been recovered from archaeological sites. Socially, hair grooming played a significant part in status and identity in African tribes. It was a way to identify someone's social status based on ethnicity, social rank, age, marital status, birth, fertility, manhood, religion, and death. Twisting, braiding, cotton or wool thread weaving, adding animal fat or modern clay are all techniques used to create these elaborate looks. Due to styling taking hours and sometimes days, much like today, women use this time of beautifying as routines to socialize and form meaningful bonds with one another. In 1444, Europeans began to kidnap Africans of all social statuses and trade them on the west coast of Africa. Many wore elaborate hairstyles. Although the Europeans were first entranced with and admired the complexity of style, texture, and adornment of Black hair, something had to be done to rid them of their identity to maintain control and dependency. Many shaved not only the men's hair, but women's hair as well. This was considered an unspeakable crime to many tribes. In 1619, the first slaves were brought to Jamestown. After being on a ship for 3 months in unbearable conditions where hygiene, let alone hair care maintenance, couldn't be maintained, many of the enslaved Africans' hair was matted upon arrival. Enslaved Africans were no longer allowed to speak their native languages, do traditional dances, and maintain their hair in the styles that they chose. All of the African culture and grooming traditions began to disappear. Slave owners wanted to cut off the enslaved Africans' connection to their true self. They pushed their standard of beauty, fair skin, straight hair, and thin facial features. African dark skin, kinky hair, and wider facial features were deemed unattractive. Because of this, lighter skinned, straight hair slaves commanded higher prices at auction.
All right, so I want you to think about this. We're going to move quickly, right? But just consider the role, and I'm sorry it was kind of hard to hear, right? But part of it was talking about that the hairstyles, right, sometimes took all day, right? But that was time to socialize. That was time that you spent with family members, community members, right? And your hairstyle reflected also the status in society, right? So it wasn't just, you know, this is how I feel like wearing my hair. It's deeply rooted in our identity, right? A part of our culture and an expression of who we are, right? So let's jump forward a little bit to the 1900s. So we had this idea that the European standards of beauty are what we should be striving for, right? And so this can be a really rich discussion, but we see Madam C.J. Walker, right? So we see Black women trying to be respectable and acceptable to white people, and we don't want to scare white people, right? We want to be seen as one of them. And so we want to try to conform ourselves to look more along the lines of the European standards. So while we're on one hand, we see this pursuing and kind of accepting this idea of beauty standards, but we also see a woman that capitalizes on this, right? Madam C.J. Walker became the first Black female millionaire, right? And her fortune came from selling products for Black women to straighten their hair, right? And even till today, the Black people spend $9.7 billion. This is a $1 billion industry a year on personal care products, including hair care products, right? So again, this is still profitable. So we see this push to look more appealing, and then all of a sudden the 60s come. Hey, that's right.
That's right.
Black people embrace their natural hair, their natural features, and said, I'm going to be Black, bold, and beautiful, right? And in taking this time to embrace your natural features, right? And so we see this movement, the Black Power movement, where Black people are embracing their natural beauty and pushing back and say, we will not conform. And this Afro became a symbol, right, of identity and self-love, right? And it was a mark of resistance to the colonial American ideas of what beauty are, right? So we go from trying to straighten our hair to wearing an Afro. And then the question becomes, right, do we straighten our hair or not to straighten our hair? What do you think? Should we straighten our hair? Should we not straighten our hair? It's a little bit of a trick question. Somebody said no. The answer is simple. The answer is there's no right or wrong. It's a personal decision, right? Every person has the right to straighten their hair or to wear their hair naturally. But the important part is that no one should be devalued or dehumanized because of how they choose to wear their hair. They should not be considered less than or less beautiful, right? And so we fast forward again in 2000s, early 2000, 2009, we see the resurgence, right, of Black women celebrating their natural beauty and flaunting their natural hairstyles. And just to be clear, when we talk about natural hair, right, it's generally we're saying how your hair naturally grows out of your head. right? The natural length and texture, right? It's untreated with chemicals. And so this includes twists, braids, cornrows, afro, bantu knots, fades, and locks, right? From here, we also see, so I want to touch on this. This is the Crown Act, which is creating a respectful and open world for natural hair. And the Crown Act really is a movement to ensure that Black women or Black people are not discriminated against based on their hairstyles. Anybody want to take a guess of who is behind the Crown Act? Anyone know? I'll tell you. The Crown Act was created in 2019, so just a couple years ago, by Dove. Do you remember them? Remember we started with Dove? What? Crazy. Now, did they really learn their lesson? And so this is their effort to try to reconcile. Was it a setup from the beginning? We don't really know. That could be a deeper conversation, right? But again, the coalition is for the protection against discrimination based on race-based hairstyles, right? So we have the Crown Act that's moving across the nation. California was actually one of the first states. I'm going to show this in just a few minutes as well. Hopefully the sound works better this time.
I woke up like this, flawless.
Hear it okay?
That's what Beyonce says. A new law makes California the first state to ban discrimination against Black students and employees over their natural hairstyles. Governor Gavin Newsom signed the bill into law yesterday. It protects Black people with styles like dreadlocks or cornrows. CBS This Morning Saturday co-host, that's Michelle Miller, is at Essence Festival in New Orleans, an annual expo celebrating Black culture and music. Michelle, what's behind this new law?
Well, Gail, good morning. Well, the Essence Festival, this festival we're talking about, is all about empowering Black women, not just in mind and spirit, but in how they wear their hair, their crown. Let's face it, hair matters to everybody. But the authors of this new law say that women with kinky and curly hair are often discriminated against, viewed as inferior even. Dove recently sponsored a survey that showed that Black women were 80% more likely to change their natural hair to conform to social norms and expectations on the job. So there are a lot of folks who think this new law is long overdue.
It had nothing to do with the job. I knew the job, or you wouldn't have hired me. It just had everything to do with my hair.
Chastity Jones was tangled in a nearly 10-year legal battle after she says an employer took back a job offer at an Alabama call center because she refused to cut her hair.
She said, "Are those dreadlocks in your hair?" And I just looked at her and I was like, "These?" And she said, "Yes." I said, "Yes, they are." She said, "Well, we can accept that here."
In 2013, Jones sued the company for discrimination and lost wages, but her claim was dismissed. Last year, the NAACP filed a petition to bring her case to the Supreme Court. It declined to hear the case.
She just didn't make me feel like I was wanted there, period.
She's not alone. In August of 2018, Louisiana's sixth grader Faith Finity was kicked off school grounds because her braided hair violated school policy. And a few months later, a wrestling official told New Jersey high school athlete Andrew Johnson he would have to cut his dreadlocks in order to compete.
To make sure our beauty is welcome.
Duck executive A.C. Eggleston Bracey spearheads the Crown Coalition, an alliance of corporate and community organizations whose goal is to highlight bias that pressures women to conform to Eurocentric standards of beauty.
What happens is your natural hair is one way, and you think you have to change that to go into a work environment because the view of what's professional is different than what your natural state is.
And now lawmakers are stepping in. California State Senator Holly Mitchell introduced the first law to associate hair as an extension of one's race, which is legally protected.
Terminated because of the way they choose to wear their hair. The way my hair grows out of my head as a Black woman is a trait of race.
Lawmakers in New York and New Jersey have now also introduced versions of the Crown Act.
California Governor Gavin Newsom says he's proud to lead the nation by being the first to sign it.
There's a human element to this. We don't want to diminish people. We don't want to demean people. We have to own up to the sins of the past. And I hope that folks are paying attention all across this country.
And New York could be the second state to sign this bill into law. It's awaiting the governor's signature. And folks here at Essence, well, they're having a big celebration breakfast on Friday. The Crown Coalition is meeting to march this victory, hopefully, they say, into a national movement.
Michelle,
Tarika?
thank you. Thank you very much. Definitely a topic I think I know you probably have experience.
I certainly do. Listen, it's 2019. I don't know too many little black girls. I grew up in Turkey, and I can remember many times there was 3 little black girls in the class always being asked, "Can I touch your hair?" You know, just we all had the 2 braided pigtails or 3 braided pigtails, being asked, "Can I touch your hair?" because they'd never seen anything like it. That's why I like Crown, creating a respectful and open world for natural hair.
Yeah.
I do think that's a good idea too, Tony.
I do think it's a good idea. I'm shocked that actually there were people losing jobs and being kicked out of school and having to cut and being asked to cut their hair before they can compete in this day and age. It's just surprising to me. I guess
it's a way to express yourself.
Yes.
And like you said, I think there's sort of an ignorance about, you know, your hair, especially if you're African American. I remember being in school and people saying, "Why don't you wash your hair every day?
Yeah.
Do you use grease?"
Yes.
It's not about. So it is an open conversation that needs to happen so people are more aware and sensitive to this.
And they make certain assumptions based on your hairdo, which also many times are not valid.
Correct.
So this is good. Crown, creating a respectful and open world for natural hair.
Did you
Nicely
say you
done, California.
You grew up in Turkey? We're going to have to talk about that some future date. All right.
I did.
All right, so we see here, right? It's interesting to me. Some people might say, why do we need to have this conversation, right? And where I would say, why do we even need a law? And to protect people from being discriminated against because of their hair, right? And what's important here is we see what the standards of beauty, the European standards of beauty, the colonizer standards of beauty, right? What they are. And for Black women, how we wear our hair is deeply rooted in our identity. Right? But it is more than that, right? It is a way of decolonizing our own minds, right? It's a way of pushing back on these systems. It is a way of denying this idea of what beauty is and embracing our own beauty. And it's also an act of self-love, right? It's an act of resistance and an act of self-love, right? How we wear our hair. All right, I want to give us a moment. We're going to move quickly with just the last few slides. Give you an opportunity. I want you to think and reflect about your own features, right? Because what we want to do right now, many of you, I'm looking right now, do not look like this idea of standards of beauties that we started with. And so I want to give you an opportunity to express some self-love, right? Self-love is an act of resistance. Think about your own features. Think about your complexion, your hair, your eyes, your nose, and your lips. And think about one that you're going to choose to embrace today. And with that, I'm going to put the link for a Padlet in the chat. And if you wouldn't mind just going over to the Padlet, you'll see lots of other folks who have also embraced their beauty. It should open up a link that looks something like this. And you'll notice at the bottom right-hand corner, there's a plus sign. If you click on that plus sign, something will pop up and you can choose to say, today I choose to embrace my, and you fill in the blank with whatever you'd like, right? You can also say just a couple of sentence frames for you. Today, I choose to embrace my blank, which was given to me by my blank, right? Also acknowledging our ancestors. Or I love my blank because it makes me feel blank, right? I embrace my wide nose given to me by my great grandfather. Pawpaw Jackson, that's what we call him. I love my big hips because they were given to me by my grandmother. You can type whatever you like. You can also just scroll and look at all this love people are giving themselves. And then as you type that out, I'm going to just kind of wrap up the last before we move on. So in this ethnic studies lesson, all of our ethnic studies lessons incorporate our guiding principles, right? Now, if you were here the last session, you saw, and I realize this is text heavy, I'm so sorry. This is being recorded, take a screenshot. You know, there are 7 C's, right? Cultivate, celebrate, center, critique, challenge, connect, and conceptualize, right? And this particular lesson, there are 3 I want to highlight, right? Centering and place a high value on pre-colonial, ancestral, indigenous, diasporic, familial, and marginalized knowledge, right? Connecting ourselves to the past and contemporary resistance movements, right? We see this over time, that the struggle for justice on the global and local levels to ensure a truer democracy. And lastly, conceptualize, right? Imagine and build new possibilities for post-imperial life that promotes collective narratives for transformative resistance, critical hope, and radical healing, right? We also have to talk about and acknowledge the trauma that comes with having to fight and struggle. I'm sure that's a whole other session if we were to sit here and talk about, you know, the self-esteem issues that folks had growing up and never fitting this idea, or the people that they love didn't fit this idea, right? There's an opportunity for healing, right? And then the last, as we kind of wrap up, right, we know that there's a lot of pushback for critical race theory, right? And I want you to be able to see, looking back at this lesson, that in order for us, and maybe it's you too, right, where you're like, hey, I didn't even know that Black people were being discriminated against in this way, right? Well, in order for us to see this, and in order for us to be able to do something about this, we have to use this critical race lens to be able to visualize, to identify, and also so that we can go back to, if you look at the 7 C's, right, and one of them to conceptualize. But Dr. Michael Dominguez from San Jose State says it this, and our theory and theoretical lenses are used and applied in all academic fields of study. They are tools that all scholars and students use constantly to pay attention to particular aspects of phenomena in a variety of contexts. And like different colored lenses and a pair of eyeglasses, we are all constantly seeing and understanding the world with certain perspectives and values and ideologies, right? CRT, critical race theories, allows us to see these inequities and these systems and oppressions and the way that they impact others, right? And it also gives us an opportunity to think critically and to dismantle these systems in order to liberate ourselves and our communities, right? All right, with that said, first of all, give yourselves a big round of applause for going through that lesson masterfully. We love to spend more time. Right now, I'm gonna pass it over to my friend, to my colleague, Dr. Ndindi, who's gonna talk to us a little bit about why we chose Black studies.
Thank you so much, Dr. Taunya Jaco. I love being part of the Liberated Ethnic Studies curriculum, and I thank you so much for inviting us to your space and to be here with you today. My name is Ndindi Kitonga. I'm a Kenyan who's lived in Los Angeles for a very long time, about 20 years, and we're about to go through a lesson, actually a lesson for very young people, for children. But before that, I thought that we could think together around some of the concepts that have brought us here. And so the first thing that I think is very important for us to think about is how and why we think about ourselves in our coalition as being a group of people who are doing Black studies. And so this is a quote that I just kind of pulled from our documents and what we've been writing. And the concept that I want to first of all promote and uplift is kujichagulia. Kujichagulia is a Kiswahili word, but kujichagulia, beyond being a Kiswahili word that I grew up with in East Africa, is a word that has taken on a Pan-African meaning. which means self-determination, the ability to name yourself and to talk about your own conditions, and to the ability to just name yourself and name your conditions and say what it is you want to be named as. And so the reason that we think about ourselves as a group of a coalition that is Black Studies and not any of these other words that you can see on the slide on the right is because we don't want any gap in our solidarity. So I happen to be somebody who's a continental African. Sometimes I think of myself in that way. But we did not want any gaps as we wrote this curriculum when it came to like folks from the Caribbean, folks who think of themselves as being Afro-descendant, Afro-Indigenous folks. Also, even the hyphen has real problems. Why is it that you don't get to be a full person, but a hyphenated person? And so this is one of the things that I kind of put in there, which is we understand that our identities are not fixed and that each generation of Black people, scholars, practitioners, what have you, have to be able to name and theorize around their own conditions. And this is how we arrived at that Black studies and not anything else, not African American studies, not Black American, not any of these other kind of words. And you can ask me questions around that at the end if you're interested in that. Next one, thank you. Okay, and so part of the Liberated Ethnic Studies curriculum is that we, Teresa and others, in this thing where there's 70 of us within Black Studies and all of the other fields, is this entryway into ethnic studies. So the question is, it's A, B, C, D. Who is the audience, right? A very context-based curriculum. Who are the BIPOC communities? Who are the particular ethnic groups, if we're thinking of them in that way, Black, Indigenous, people of color. In this particular case, African, Black folks, African diasporic folks. C comes down to something we can talk about later, which is we have a 7C type of curriculum, which are and here I think we've listed 4. So culture, what are we trying to go for? In the lesson I'm about to describe that has to do with very young children, it's about community cultural wealth, the content in Sulwe, which is a book written by Lupita Nyong'o. And the concept is colorism, also anti-Blackness, white privilege, white supremacy, resistance. And those are the concepts. So that's the C bit of our entryway. And then of course, we always are writing curriculum that matches and addresses like the developmental stage that folks are in. And so we encourage you after this to really kind of look into how we're thinking about these questions and talking to each other and how we kind of think about developmentally what young people need and the conversations that they need to have. Next one, thank you. Cool. Oh, that one. Okay. So I would like for us to backtrack just a bit. And I really love what Taunya talked about. And we would like to, when we talked about this, we thought about, let's do a little bit of lessons and then let's backtrack and make sure that we are all on the same page. And part of being all on the same page is really understanding what is the basis of this thing that we are calling oppression or domination and how we understand it. And so, of course, there's the ideological aspect of it, right? Dominant values and ideas and beliefs around people. There's the institutional aspect of it, right? The policies that happen within schools, communities, what have you, and how those perpetuate inequities and all sorts of racist frameworks. There's the interpersonal bit of it, where it's between interpersonal, right? You and another person in community in smaller spaces, not quite institutional spaces. How are we relating to each other? Especially as we've been differentiated in these particular ways. based on race, ethnicity, what have you. And of course, there's internal oppression. And here I think of people like Fanon and Sylvia Winter, who like that dimension, you actually have the ability within yourself to like put yourself down based on the ideas that you see out there, the institutional like ways in which like people participate in institutions that tell people that they are inferior, less than, what have you, or need to assimilate, cannot be their full selves, in interpersonal relationships that also reinforce that. So we don't want to forget the internal aspects of these kind of systems of oppression. So next one. Yeah, and actually before that, Beverly Tatum, the way she talks about oppression, sometimes it seems like a fluffy airness. And that's the reason I try to like think about it in those 4 ways, is it's important. It becomes like air. And so in some interesting kind of way, we're going to talk about hair and skin and beauty today, but I think it's powerful and pretty subversive, because we're going to tap into the internal piece and talk about it in the interpersonal space, institutionally, and how it forms ideas about how people think about themselves. And I think that's powerful, because sometimes when people in activist spaces think about like inequities, you want to hit what you think are the bigger pieces, right? Like poverty, but like I think the way that we're thinking about it is that actually all of these ways that oppression works do matter. And quite frankly, like for young people in that K-12 space or K-16 space, it's super, super important to not dismiss what is frivolously understood as beauty or hair or skin color. And so that our choice in that was very political and quite purposeful, because we could have just come here and been like, rah, 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 Black Panthers. And of course I can do that too. But I think there's something there that's important, that's worth like really hitting, even if because I also think that beauty and hair and color and all of this type of thing gets feminized. And I think that men need to think about this thing as well as a power relation and a social relation. So I'm going to push a little forward into this thing that I think we all see often called intersectionality. Sorry, can you push just, yes. And I'm going to just suggest that it is also a social relation. I love what Audre Lorde says. There's no such thing as a single issue struggle, because we do not live single issue lives, but also that you are not a disparate piece of these things, you're a complete full person. But once we understand how the intersection of gender or nationality or racial identity or disability or colorism or anti-Blackness, how they form even a whole new type of thing is super important. And so I'm also going to suggest that this framework is a very much a framework that comes out of Black radical thoughts, and not just Black people, Indigenous folks, brown folks, all sorts of people have been thinking about this. And so even if these words are new to us or you, they're not new as far as people fighting for the types of societies and lives that they would like. Next one, thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna speed through a quick lesson. I really do believe and think a lot about someone like Sojourner Truth, who was a Dutch-speaking woman. I don't even have time to give you her history, but she's a Black woman who speaks Dutch. Fill it in for yourself. Who asks, and ain't I a woman? And the reason she asked this question is because people are talking about suffrage and voting rights, and then for women, and then Black men are talking about the abolition of slavery. And she cuts through the truth and says, do we not want to be free? not only to vote, but to be complete and full human beings. 1851, as someone who was living in New York, who was speaking Dutch. So every time when I think about like the most relevant issues, movement-based issues, I really do want to encourage everyone to look at Black feminist traditions, also the traditions of Indigenous folks and Brown folks. I'm not going to read the entire slide, but the Combahee Collective really in 1974 thinks about the way we're thinking about all of these different types of oppressions as interlocking, and says we cannot move. We can't just say that a certain group of people can just like pull their issue to the side. And that document is very informative for Kimberly Crenshaw, who now is up fighting CRT. Her most important work was in the 80s and 90s. I won't say most important work, but the work that we think about that she does 80s, 90s, 2000s. And now it's a very strange thing for her to be in her 60s to be, again, relitigating this thing on social media. So I guess that the whole like to-date thing is like the conversations that we're having, as I understand them from a Black studies perspective and a womanist feminist perspective, and all of these perspectives, before I get into this lesson, is one that actually really understands domination has all of these dimensions. And people who are marginalized on all of these fronts sometimes are the most flexible, creative, interesting, and have things to offer. And I really hope that you, if you have not met or engaged with some of these scholars, that you look into what they are about, in the same way that I'm always, as a Black and African person, I'm always looking at Brown folks and other folks so that we can understand what needs to be done. Next one, thank you. Oh, okay, so I'll be quiet, and I am proposing some things around this topic called intersectionality or interlocking oppressions. Maybe put something in the chat. And one question, one very provocative question that Crenshaw has is, is the question, I am Black, or I am a person who happens to be Black? And I don't think that we've ever reached any kind of liberation where someone can say, I am a person who happens to be X, except if you're part of a dominant culture, right? So it seems to be all encompassing in certain ways. And of course, we are all aspiring to full humanity under these systems. But the reason we're here today, for instance, is to talk about Black studies. Why is it we're talking about it in a particular way? And so maybe in the chat, what I suggested are some issues that are intersectional. I do work with a lot of unhoused, unsheltered youth. And so one issue for us are sometimes like trans youth don't have a place to go, particularly trans youth of color, right? I proposed a couple of bullets here. So I don't know if anyone has something to throw in the chat. Oh, sorry. The outcomes of Black youth and foster care systems, LGBTQ issues and gender. There's quite a bit. And I guess what I'm saying is I'm encouraging folks, thank you. Immigration, yes. Immigration in the United States is very much understood or talked about in the mainstream narrative as being an issue of, actually, I think in most cases, quite like it's Mexican issue. Like forget Central Americans, all sorts of other folks. And I think there's a lot there that you've touched on. Thank you so much. Legislation against trans folks. I think you are absolutely correct. Yes. That is another issue, right? So it's not just sometimes sexuality, but there's gender, and race. And actually, when race comes into play, Black trans women should not expect to live beyond the age of 36. That's how interesting that particular group of oppressions pile up to create something new. Whereas if you're a cis white woman who's middle class, your lifespan is 74. That there's a disparate type of thing going on there that needs to be addressed. Collective trauma, mental health, yes, thank you. Education, language, yes. These are all intersectional and need to be kind of understood and thought about in those ways. And so I'm hoping part of this discussion pushes us to think about them in these ways. Yes, disability, the social construction of disability, age, how we treat each other in community, how we understand each other. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to push ahead and then we're going to have a chance to like hear your voices. Religion, thank you, Temis. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to suggest, I didn't even put all of the types of curriculum, but again, when Taunya and I talked about it, we're like, let's do a lesson, let's step back and then let's do a lesson. Okay, so here we go. Formal curriculum, traditional, dominant discourse, what you get at school. It's explicitly stated, State of California tells you by the end of grade 12, you need to know X. Very easy to understand. Not inclusive necessarily, doesn't mean that it does what you want it to do. Hidden curriculum are all of the rules, the unintended consequences of being in educational spaces, even when people are racialized and minoritized. So I suggest to you, maybe you've never been in a class that taught you, this is how you behave in a meeting. This is what it means to be professional. This is what professional hair looks like and garb looks like. But you still got the hidden curriculum. You still understood brown nosing, being polite, respectability, civility as something that this society tells you you need to do to participate in it. This is what we understand to be the hidden curriculum. And then the null curriculum is what doesn't even make the cut. And we would like to believe that LESMC in our Liberated Ethnic Studies curriculum, that we are hitting some aspects of the null curriculum, that you get to be in there. We get to put in aspects of this thing. And we would very much like to hear from all of you, aspects of curriculum that don't make it, that is that from an ethnic studies lens. Next one, thanks. Cool. I also would like to suggest that it's important for us to have some language around what this hidden curriculum is around and what capital means. So cultural capital is how you know. And so for Black folks, how we know and how we understand the world is not affirmed necessarily within these traditional school systems and within like traditional classrooms. Hence, we are having these conversations, right? Social capital, who you know. That's a big part of it. Who you know, who has influence to get you in. And then human capital is what you know. And so education systems legitimize all of these types of things. I happen to be a science teacher, so it's not just about mitosis. It's also about how we're talking about it, the practices around it, values, ways of talking, ways of dressing, ways of being, how you participate in the thing. And certain people just have access, if you're part of dominant culture, access to more cultural capital. And so this is kind of what we're trying to like dispel myths about and deconstruct and dismantle and also create new things. Next one. Cool. All right. So in the chat, I also have a Padlet. I did not realize that. Taunya has one as well. But I love Taunya's, that it's an ongoing conversation That's so dope to me. I'll put it in the chat. And what we'll do is, I don't have a demand. I run a tiny little democratic school. I don't have a demand that I'm a talking head and you just have to listen to me go on and on. If there are things that are super important to you, I would like this hopefully to be kind of a collective place where you can all type, and I'll send it off to Fabian. It'll always be accessible to all of you, but also it can be accessible in the sense that we share beyond your community in Pomona. So then the prompt is, think about the educational or other spaces you work in or occupy, and what are areas of strength and or growth for you when it comes to those 4 eyes of oppression, intersectionality, or curriculum, right? So intrapersonal, the you piece that you want to work on, decolonize, if you feel safe and free talking about that. The interpersonal piece, the institutional piece, maybe your place of work and who you're engaging with, or the ideological piece, the ideas piece, these ideas that keep suggesting that certain groups of us should be dehumanized. So I'll be quiet for like 2 minutes. I know that's not enough for you to type anything, but at least you can like put your name in with the intention of typing something later. And this piece to me is, even if it's completely empty, we hope that it can be an offering for your community that you can own and kind of keep building, kind of like the piece that Taunya built, where people can like slowly click on that plus sign and think about certain things and keep adding them there, so that our conversation is ongoing, and that we can really subvert a lot of Western and Eurocentric like ways of being that suggest we're only here at this time, you only got to do it this time, it's time bound, and all of those types of things. It is not time bound, it's ongoing conversation. And the best type of society, we'd be able to sit together for a very long time and think together, and I would know everybody's name and I would know all of deeply, but right, we have certain constraints. So I'm going to encourage you to do that, and I'll be quiet for 2 minutes. Awesome. I'll give it one more. Yes, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Angela. The space piece of this is so important, I think. And at the same time, I really love some of the creativity that we have around, right, technology. So even that, I'm always like, what is a decolonized practice around technology? So many of us can be together from many places, but still share deeply. That's a very interesting question for me. Thank you for bringing it up. So I see that people are typing, and that's okay. We're going to leave this space for you all to kind of work on that. And then I'm going to give you a heads up. At the end of my thing, I'm going to have the slide again. So that'll be another opportunity, right? So at the beginning, if you're feeling a little shy or you're not ready, again, I don't think you don't need to like be full on in tune to whatever I'm talking about. If there's things that you think should go on that page for your community and for what it is you all are trying to do together, type it in there. Feel free to ignore whatever it is I'm going on and on about that doesn't work for you. Thank you. Next one. Cool. Okay, and so the lesson this was a K2 lesson. Again, I'm a secondary, I'm trained for secondary education, and I also teach in higher education. And this is really beautiful to me, kind of how it was also a stretch for me. And I like to say that as a presenter, just so that I think honesty and authenticity is important for us to all collectively move forward and for everyone to know that you also could be doing this kind of thing. And I want you to. Next one. So Black is beautiful. The topic is colorism. And so the way that we think about in LESMC, how we've organized our lessons and why we really hope that you will keep looking into what we do is there's these 4 aspects, right? So there is always a cultural energizer, and then we get into some concepts. And then there's the community collaboration bit of it, and then there's dialogue. So that's what we're going to do very quickly. Next one. Cool. Before we do that, I am going to push us up. So this is Black Studies. This is what it's about. And I'm going to read these out. If these ring true for you, type it in the chat or lift your hand. I'm hoping some of the facilitators can help me if I miss it. But I'm really hoping someone will unmute and share something. The first one, if a product is nude or flesh tone, it will usually match my skin color or your skin color. You can always find makeup, foundation, costuming makeup to match your skin tone. If that's not true for you, I would like to hear. Your skin tone does not often come up as a reason not to date, befriend, or socialize with you. And if this is a completely strange phenomenon to you and you feel brave, I really would like for you to share, like, I didn't even know this was a thing. Because I think this is how people like move along and really start to understand things. If you understand yourself to be a Black person, Indigenous person, brown person, person of color, however you understand yourself, you grew up watching TV or media with characters whose skin tone matches yours. If this is not you, I'm curious to hear from you. it has never been suggested that you would be more pretty, attractive, or cute if you had a lighter complexion. So the statement, "You're cute for a Black girl," has not come your way. Or if it has come your way, I'm curious about that too. You have never used lightening products, felt pressure to lighten your skin, or have witnessed family members using these products, or you didn't even know that this was a thing. You didn't know that people are engaging in these conversations. And if you're open to talk a little bit about that, I want to hear from you. And finally, having witnessed family members looking down on different family members based on their darker or lighter complexions. So I'm going to open it up for maybe a minute or two for someone who wants to kind of bravely contribute. There are no wrong answers, just, you know, a sharing of your experience with that.
I'd like to address the one about makeup, number 2.
Yes, thank you, Vicki.
I usually cannot go in the store and find makeup that goes with my complexion. I saw on television Queen Latifah had a product. I went to the store, they didn't have it, or at least they didn't have the color that was appropriate for me. And so I found that I would go to fashion fair or those companies that made products specifically for women of color. So that's been my experience with foundation. And now I'm at a place where it doesn't really matter.
Right, that's interesting. And I thank you. It seems like you're saying you've divested from the whole system. It doesn't even matter anymore. Yeah, interesting. Thank you so much. Is there maybe one more person who would like to think about this? Maybe you're on the other side. Thank you so much, Vicki, for sharing bravely. Maybe you're on the other side of this where you didn't even realize like this is a thing.
I'll just jump in here. I'm a light-skinned Latino, and I had friends of different skin tones, and I knew that I saw that they were, of course, victims of prejudice a lot more than I was.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for naming that. Actually, I think that's very important to understand, even if people are minoritized in certain ways, that there is a hierarchy of color. So this might be a prompt that we put forward in our curriculum. Next one, thanks. And so our cultural energizer, again, this is K2. I love this little girl. I just think she's so beautiful and so cute. So please, in the chat, and I want to encourage everybody, don't worry about the other stuff. What makes you feel beautiful on the inside? Just what is it that makes you feel you are a special and beautiful human when you've had that experience? Laughing with family and friends, yes. Warmth of the sun, yes. Nature, okay. Dancing, yes. People get something positive from my singing, and oh, that's beautiful, Gregory. So you sing and that's beautiful, thank you. Okay. Singing, yes. Yes. Take one more. Listening to music, thank you. So this question is our cultural and love for people makes me feel beautiful. I love to see positivity. Yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so the reason that we're asking what makes people feel beautiful and on the inside is because you all did what everyone does, which is you reach for deeper ideas and concepts. Ooh, cool, fresh, crisp air. Yeah. Ooh, that's poetic. Okay. Those number topics. Oh, yes, yes. Love it. So as education, as Freddie said, like it's not like there's nothing new, right? We're just teasing out and having discussions about what it is we understand about the world. That's how I understand education, right? I'm not imposing any new ideas. You all actually know and fully understand this thing. So what makes you feel beautiful on the inside when it does not match the outside and how you're being treated based on skin color? That's why we're having a conversation on colorism. Next one, thanks. Okay, and so for this lesson, we have a couple of principles. Our first principle in LESMC is cultivating empathy and a little bit of what we've done before, self-determination, those ideas. And then the second one, really, the fifth one that is part of this lesson is challenging hegemonic beliefs around ideas and beauty and all of those types of things that you are all able to tap into right now. And so next one. Colorism then, if we think about it in this way, is not just as simple as some people have different skin color and it's different and it's great. If you think about it, if you just love people because they're different, it becomes that there's a mismatch within how beauty is understood on the inside versus outside on these institutional, interpersonal, ideological levels, based usually in anti-Blackness and racism that perpetuate this thing that we're calling colorism. And that's why we're saying it's important. Next one. And so part of this is with Sulwe is a book about it. But before we actually get into the book, this is a test that has been done over and over again. The image on the right is from the 50s, just before Brown versus Board of Education by two Black psychologists who over quite a few decades asked Black young people, who's beautiful, who's smarter, what have you. It's the doll test. And from the 50s until now, I think the most recent one I've ever seen was in the 2010s. Children of all ages, colors, statures, disabilities, continent, always choose the white presenting doll as the beautiful, capable, interesting, smart, relevant one. And so I think we have work to do. Next one. Thank you. So Sulwe is a book by Lupita Nyong'o that tries to tease these out. It is age 4 to 8 appropriate. And in this book, next one, what happens is Sulwe, who's a dark-skinned African young person, gets bullied and teased by her friends. And then she also internalizes that message and tries to eat white foods, bananas, crackers, and what have you, to change herself from inside out. Is also part of the reason I asked you what makes you feel beautiful on the inside. Next one. And then she has a dream and a super kind of natural encounter. What I do love about this book is that supernatural encounter, I think, is very much like pushes against a very Western paradigm about how people get knowledge and the value of dreams, dreaming, and that kind of existential thing. So she has that experience and gets to the realization that her insides are beautiful, but also that her outside is beautiful. Next one. Sorry, I'm up against a time crunch. And this kind of understanding of that particular concept. Sorry, next one. Cool. Yeah, and then at the end of it, she does feel beautiful both inside and out, which is something we do want to emphasize, right? When we think about the intrapersonal piece, it's not so much that we do not want our young people to be out here appealing to dominant discourses, narratives, and cultures. That actually is not the purpose of our conversation here today. Next one. I can do it by 7:50. Sorry. I love how I'm encouraging myself internally as we go. But and then the conversation piece, and the reason I'm really quite comfortable pushing ahead, as much as I said, I reject the Western concept of time, is because we're going to share these materials with you and we're going to be in relationship with each other. And this is not the end of it. So please don't take my rushing as a sign of dismissiveness or a lack of care for you. But these are some of the questions for that level with experts and people who are working with people in K2 who really understand, what is it now you understand about this? If we had time, I would really ask you this question, and what can be done next? That should be the next piece, next one. I do have a piece on blackfishing, which I don't know if it's a K2 piece, but I do think it's important for social media, which is what is blackfishing, but people who are appropriating Blackness for aesthetics, but not willing to be part of our actual struggles and that kind of thing, and thinking about how young people can confront that. So I think for our units for higher levels, really, young people participating in social media on those levels, we want them to have tools to address this kind of thing. Sorry, next one. And then hopefully at the end of our lessons, which are not as rushed as I'm presenting them, is this idea that we're going to stop colorism in our classrooms by creating some kind of agreements as to how we address it, coming up with language and ways to think about it, right? So it's not just that everyone is beautiful. This is a Black Studies chapter. Black is beautiful. Specifically, that does not negate anybody else's beauty. But once we think about a particular Western, colonial, Eurocentric history, declaring Black as beautiful is subversive and important for young people, not just Black people, everyone, to understand how and why we're thinking about it in this way. Next one. And then I have a couple of books. An ethnic studies lens for us suggests that the authors of the books are, in our case, talking about skin tone and whatever Black. So all of these are books written by and Black people and for Black people. That inclusive kind of term I suggested before. Next one. And then I do have an adult one. If you're kind of new to these ideas, thick is awesome, like colorism, fat phobia, all of the in-between pop cultural little things that sometimes are not fully understood and put up in academia as things worth understanding. And also, again, I said beauty is not frivolous, right? So look at how Tressie looks at it. Capital demands that beauty be coercive. It's not just as simple as how the hair grows out of my head. It's a capital demand, right? If beauty matters at all to how people perceive you and how institutions treat you, which rules are applied to you and what choices you can make, then beauty must also be a structure of patterns, institutions, and exchanges that eat eats your preferences for lunch. And she's provocative and awesome. And I think I'm done. Next one, I think I'm done. Oh, I'm not done. Okay, I'm gonna put this one in the chat. This is a conversation of Afro, Latinx folks and Caribbean folks addressing colorism in their own communities. I'll put that in the chat. Next one. And I think that's it for me. And like I said, at the end, I'm going to ask you to go back to our reflection board and type in there if you have something to say. And that is all from me. Thank you so much.
All right, I believe we are turning it back over. Yes. We'll do questions. I'll leave that as well and just put in the chat as well to visit our website, theliberatedethnicstudies.org, and then our contact information is there for you as well. But with that said, can I turn it back over to Fabian?
Okay, with that being said, are we going to get started with our Q&A at this time? Greetings, everyone. I'm Yolanda Brown. I'm with PICA. I am also the education chair of the NAACP of Pomona Valley branch. We serve 10 cities. So the first question, before I ask the first question, if you have questions, you can use your reaction button to raise your hand and I will call on you and you can share your question with the speakers of the evening. If you're unable to raise your hand with the reaction button, if you raise your hand in the cameras, I will call on you, or you can put it in the chat that you have a question and I'll read it from there. Thank you so much. So the first question that we would like to ask you is, why should the school district implement liberated ethnic studies model curriculum instead of the state's ethnic studies model curriculum at this time? Can someone answer?
I've been talking for a while, so I'll let Dr. Jaco.
Teresa, did you want to jump in?
I can,
because Teresa was on the front line, so I'll let her.
Yeah, I can start, but I'll. You saw why partly today. We have some phenomenal folks working with liberated ethnic studies, but I think in a nutshell, the state never intended to develop a curricular framework. So they develop, I guess what you would say, a tree, right? Like just the trunk of the tree without any of the leaves or flowers or foliage that goes on with that tree. So you have an option to go with quite a few people who can put leaves on trees. Now, some of them are going to put artificial leaves and other ones are going to put real ones, right? And the beauty of Liberated Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum Coalition is partly what you saw today, is that we are a coalition of folks who have been doing this work in ethnic studies for years. In many of the districts where the research was done that provided evidence that ethnic studies works, right? We have the experience, right? We have the knowledge of what ethnic studies is. So we're not going to sit and there are differences between what is multiculturalism and what is ethnic studies. We are focused on ethnic studies. Self-determination is a really strong aspect of our ethnic studies framework. The Black Studies unit that you saw today, the 2 units were developed by Black educators. Chapter 1, which is an intro to ethnic studies, and the comparative ethnic studies are the only 2 chapters that are developed by multiple folks within the fields, right? So that you may have more folks coming together to develop those curricular units. But the Asian American Studies chapter, the Black Studies chapter, the American Indian Studies chapter, the Chicano Latino Studies chapter, those are all developed by experts within that field. And the other, which I think is critically important in terms of liberated ethnic studies, are two. We make no bones about it. Our focus on promoting ethnic studies is to highlight and raise the histories and stories of communities of color, right? Black studies, Asian American studies, American Indian studies, and Latino studies are central, and those perspectives are central to ethnic studies. We are not a multicultural curriculum. We are a curriculum that's focused on the stories, the marginalized stories, the forgotten stories of people who have been left out of the curriculum. Again, and I guess this would be the last one that I would say, there's two more. One is, we're not afraid to deal with the very real issues that ethnic studies is about, right? We talk about racism. Racism is central to ethnic studies. Community responsiveness, responding to the needs of the communities where we're located. We have a decolonial lens to our curriculum. And then finally, we work with the communities where we are situated. So we don't come in and say, okay, well, here's your curriculum. Now you go out and you teach it, even though we do have lesson plans that we put up on our website. A part of our work is to work with school districts to design curricular materials that will be theirs. We leave, this becomes your curriculum, but you're working with some of the best folks in the state to develop that curriculum. And I don't know, did I leave anything out, Taunya or Ndindi?
No, I think you captured it, but I think it's important. I just want to emphasize and echo what you said about the part about self-determination, and being authentic to ethnic studies means that you have, that it's written, the curriculum itself should be written by educators of color. It should be written by BIPOC folks, right? We should be centering our own narratives and our own stories. And you can't take ethnic studies out of the hands of ethnic studies practitioners and scholars and have someone outside write it and then give it to you, right? That's not ethnic studies. You've completely undermined the principles, the values of what makes it ethnic studies. And I think that's a key piece, a key component. And I just put the link in the chat, which really documents the story of the Liberated Ethnic Studies just consortium and how it was came about. So I encourage you to watch and to share.
Well, thank you so much for those responses. Are there any other questions at this time? We don't have any. I don't see any in the chat. Let's check. Somebody raise their hand. But the presentation was definitely timing. It was thorough. It was fantastic. It top notch. I was very pleased by it. Any other questions? I just see a couple of thankses in the box. Yes, we celebrate the presenters this evening. Oh, here's a question. What was the Zulu word in the beginning? I would like to hear it again, please. I think that was Sonobona.
Salbona, yeah.
Salbona.
Yes. And I'll put it in the chat as well, so you can, if you just did a general Google search, you would find it too.
Yeah. And can I say, as kind of a continental African person, the fact that even aspects of a language I speak finds it in a curriculum somewhere is so interesting to me. Just living in the United States and participating in LESMC and like, this is what Taunya is doing. These are ideas like that go beyond. That's super impressive to me, right? I grew up in Kenya in a little
tiny town, just minding my own business, and that there are words and ideas that I can participate in, and that other people want to participate in how we want to do things. It's super impressive. It's not just a random word to me. It's let's go. It's interesting to me. It's so exciting. And I thank you so much for inviting me here.
You're so welcome. We're so glad to have you all here this evening. Thank you, Caroline, for that question. We appreciate your question. Any other questions at this time? Well, now I will turn it back. I will turn it back over to Fabian. It's 8:03. Fabian?
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you for the presentation. And to close this out, I have a very special person. I have the Vice President of the Latino Roundtable, Pomona San Gabriel Valley, Angela Zambrano. Can you please share a few words with us to close this out?
Sure. Thank you, Fabian. Gracias. Like Fabian said, my name is Angela Zambrano. I am the Vice Chair of the Latina Roundtable of the Pomona and San Gabriel Valley. And I want to thank Fabian and the Pomona Education Coalition, the Ethnic Studies Committee, and the Liberated Ethnic Studies Model Curriculum Coalition for their extraordinary and amazing program. And I mean, you started us off with the poetry of Judea 1. He was just so powerful. And it was like a wow, you know, this is gonna be good. So, and yeah, I would clearly, the presentations by Dr. Jaco and Kitonga, and also the emceeing of Teresa and Yolanda, which is wonderful as well. And I mean, I found the presentations inspiring because you created a space to deepen our understanding of our roots. But most importantly, we learn how our minds are colonized, and made it clear the importance of decolonizing our minds and understanding that the problem is that we have been indoctrinated by the standards set by the colonizer and the capitalist system. And the education in the United States is rooted in colonialism and imperialism. So it is critical that we learn and deepen our understanding about colonialism and the impact that it has had on our children and people of color. And it's equally important, as you showed us, that we must learn about how, despite or in spite of the brainwashing that they have attempted to do on us, we have fought back. We fight back to keep our roots, our culture, our music, our language that our ancestors taught us, and our humanity. We have not lost our humanity. In fact, it's so rooted and so deep that that's what gives us the strength to keep fighting. And that we must fight to make sure that the school districts implement the Liberated Ethnic Studies curriculum instead of the state ethnic studies model. And that was really clear to me. And I want to thank you because I feel empowered. And you know what? Sí se puede. We can do it. So gracias. It was great. And I hope this is one of many conversations and discussions. Thank you. Gracias.
Thank you all.
Pomona.
Yes.
Pomona.
Thank you so much. In the chat, I think an exchange is very important and powerful. So I'm asking, not right now, but in the future, if there's something an action item for us as presenters.
Yeah, let us know.
Eventually, yeah.
And we're here for you.
Yeah, well, we to we're gonna keep fighting. I don't think it's gonna be easy to get to have the school districts adopt the liberated ethnic studies curriculum. It's gonna be a huge fight. And I think we need to like be clear about that and how do we work together to make sure that that's happened. I mean, I just heard today that the Republican candidate from Virginia, he's saying that if he gets elected, he's going to ban critical race theory in all the schools. So we see it coming even more, you know, and the white supremacists feel like they can, you know, run over us. But hey, 500 years of struggle do not disappear.
That's absolutely true. It's absolutely true.
Thank you all.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for